session. So welcome to today's SICS Research Seminar. Thanks all for coming. And I'll begin by acknowledging the Wiradjuri, Ngunnawal, Gundungurra and Biripi peoples of Australia, who are the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which CSU's campuses are located, and pay respect to their elders, both past and present. So as noted, the session is being recorded. It's also helpful for us to keep track of who's here. So if everyone could just type a quick hello into the chat with your name and where you're from, that's useful for us for our record keeping. Usual format, 40 to 45 minute presentation by Yazdan and plenty of time for questions after that. So you can feel free to put questions into the chat box and I'll keep track of those, and we can work with Yazdan at the end to address those. So today's seminar is called Positive Information Science, an emerging area of research, policy and practice. And our presenter is the esteemed Dr. Yazdan Mansourian. We all know Yazdan, so it feels a bit weird doing this, but we always do this bio bit, so I'm going to plow on with it anyway. Yazdan is a lecturer in the School of Information and Communication Studies at Charles Sturt, and we all know him as a deep and joyful thinker. He received his PhD in information science from the University of Sheffield, which I feel qualified to recognize as one of the finest seats of learning in the world. Prior to joining CSU, Yazdan was director of the Central Library and head of the LIS department at Kharazmi University in Tehran. His current research interests are human information behavior and information seeking and sharing in the context of serious leisure. And on that topic, worth noticing that we're working with Yazdan on an upcoming episode of SICS Radio on that very topic, so keep an ear out for that. Yazdan's interested in philosophical and theoretical aspects of LIS and the various methods in which we can put these theories into practice. So without further ado, over to you, Yazdan.
Thank you very much, Simon, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for attending this presentation. I share my screen. So hopefully you can see the PowerPoint. That's great. So today I'm talking about positive information science as an emerging area of research, policy and practice. And basically what I'm planning to do is I'm going to reflect on the past 4 years of my ongoing research program about human information behavior in the context of serious leisure. When I began this area in late 2017, early 2018, if someone told me in that time that by 2022 you are going to interview bonsai growers in Australia, I probably would be very surprised and say why on earth I should do that. So but basically it was an exploration, it was an exploratory journey for me. And during these years, by doing a number of projects, I had a chance to explore the literature and what's happening in the current scholarship in human information behavior. And in a very nutshell, I try to understand how people engage with various forms of information as part of their leisure activity. When we say various forms of information, I need to highlight that because information that we collect, share, and produce during our leisure time is much more than just text information. It's about all forms of information, embodied information, various kinds of information. So, and I'm trying to find to what extent the people information practice or experiences are meaningful and joyful. So I explain how the concept of positive information science emerged from my research in next slides, and I will review positive information science as a concept, as a new concept, and I'm trying to explain how it can provide LIS researchers with a multidisciplinary conceptual framework for future studies. And again, I need to highlight the multidisciplinary aspects of that. So what is positive information science? As far as I know, and I searched through the literature, the first time this term was coined was in a panel at ASIS conference in 2009. And Jenna Hartel, Jarkko Kari, Robert Stebbins, and Marcia Bates were the panelists. And they basically criticized the predominantly problem-oriented research approach in LIS. And they called for more attention to positive qualities of information system and a user's positive characteristics and habits. And basically it was a continue of a paper, a very important paper that Jarkko Kari and Jenna Hartel published in 2007 in JSIS. It's called Information and Higher Things in Life, addressing the pleasurable and profound in information science. That was just the follow-up of that paper, and in that paper they called for more attention to positive and pleasurable and profound aspects of life. So, however, again, I reviewed the literature and I realized that this idea of positive information science has been neglected in this LIS scholarship afterwards. So I haven't seen any research about that or any other. There might be that I might probably miss that, but I haven't found anything after that. So I can summarize. Of course, before saying that, I need to highlight something else. There are, of course, papers, like, for example, a paper called Sharing Happy Information by Fiona Tinto and Ian Rothman. There are a number of papers about that, but the concept of positive information science, I haven't seen anywhere after this. So I need to clarify this point. So I can summarize my literature review in this table. Basically, when you review human information behavior scholarship from the past to present, there are a number of areas which are very well explored, like information seeking. We have a number of models about information seeking. We have a huge number of papers about that. But there are just a few papers about information sharing. So again, it doesn't mean there is nothing. There are some, but comparing to information science, seeking is just a small portion. And also most scholars focus on work and study context. And again, leisure context is not very well researched. And cognitive aspects of human information behavior is more dominant than affective aspects. But as a matter of fact, we are more emotional creatures than rational. Research in decision making showed that most decisions that we make, even very big decisions in our life, is mainly based on our emotion reaction to realities rather than rationality. Occasionally, we make some rational decisions, but in daily life, most of the time, we are motivated by emotion. And then when in information science, we are exploring the interaction between human and information resources, we assume that information users are very rational creatures and they make all the rational decision, but that's not the case. So, and again, we focus on negative emotions a lot rather than positive. So literature, if you look at the literature, you know better than me, there are plenty of papers about information overload, information anxiety, information poverty, you know, all different things of negative aspects. And textual information is in our focal point, but non-textual, not very much. So quantitative comparing to qualitative again, personal perspective comparing to social perspective, and a diagnostic approach comparing to motivational approaches. By this table, I don't want to underestimate the value of all these information-seeking, cognitive, textual, information, quantitative methods. They are valuable, they are informative, there is nothing wrong with them, but they are not sufficient. So that's the point. Right. So when you look at the literature again, the first signs of emotion in information behavior, you can see it's in the model by Carol Quartho. You all know this model, and she was one of the first scholars who realized the importance of affective aspects of information behavior. And in her model, she's talking about uncertainty, optimism, confusion, frustration, doubt, relief, satisfaction, and dissatisfaction. Again, here in this list of emotions, you can see mainly are negative, like confusion, frustration, doubt, uncertainty. And there are just a few slightly positive, like optimism. There is nothing about joy, for example. The joy of information is a very recent topic. So that's an example. And then, so probably you might ask, so what? So what are the important things that I'm talking about, and what is the significance of this discussion? Basically, there is a gap in human information behavior scholarship that stops us to have a deep and comprehensive understanding of the interaction between human and information in real situation. And also to address this gap, we need more qualitative studies about affective aspects of information behavior in everyday life context like leisure. And also we need to focus on underexplored topics such as information sharing in fun and fandom activities. And there is a big difference between looking for information and becoming informed. That's the key thing here. We assume that people usually look for information to be informed, but that's not the case. Most of the information that we use in our daily life, we are not looking for them. They just come to us. The information comes to us. And then I'll give you an example. I was driving a few months ago, and I was listening to the radio, and Richard Feidler was talking to a British philosopher, John Gray. They were talking about feline philosophy. I never heard this term before. And then I came home and I ordered the book, and I received the book. I read it. I wrote a review. So the point here is, and we all do the same things every day. The point is, I had no problem to solve about feline philosophy. It's not a problem in my life. It's not a task. No one asked me to search for it. No one asked me to read this book. I don't get paid for that, you know. Why I am doing that? Because I like it, because I'm interested. And this is the case for all of us, you know. So the common existing assumption about information behavior, that there is always a beginning point and end point, and then we go through a very rational step by step, is just telling part of the story. It's not the entire story. We interact with information in very different way in reality, and that's why we need. So, and we need to look at higher things in life. So, as I said earlier, Jarkko Kari and Jenna Hartel were among first scholars to talk about it, and then Don Knoll, another scholar, about the same issue. So there are researchers who realize the lack and the gap here, and they are calling for more attention. And recently, Reijo Savolainen wrote a paper in Journal Documentation about infotainment and the entertaining aspects of information, which is relevant to communication scholarship. So, and we neglected that. So let's have a look at this very famous Wheel of Emotions by Robert Plutchik. So these are the main emotions that humankind is dealing with. So, and we experiencing it. So as you can see, there are both negative and positive. the point here is, my argument basically here is, when we interact with any information item, we experience at least one of these emotions. Of course, there are information items that doesn't, make us happy or sad. We have a very neutral reaction to them. But most of the time, the interaction with information is not emotion free. It's just, there is always an emotion over there. And that's why we need to address, and we need to discover, and we need to understand, because it leads us for the next stages of information behavior. It plays a very important role, positive psychology tells us the same thing. Positive psychology, that I briefly go through it, about that. It's a very popular approach during the past 20 years. It's a new movement. Martin Seligman started in 1998, and he said that after several years of being a psychologist, he realized that in psychology discipline, we always, not always, most of the time, we are looking at what goes wrong rather than what goes well. So we look at trauma, we look at stress, we look at depression, anxiety, and we try to fix things. We try to repair things. But in everyday life, again, the negative sides are not the only thing. There are joy in life. There are, happiness. However, this new field of study, there are so many misunderstandings about that. I explain a little bit. But Seligman, who is still active in this area, and Csikszentmihalyi, who sadly passed in October last year, they are the founders of this field, and they are talking about how important it is to look at the positive sides and focusing on what works. And basically, they are hoping to teach us to ask better questions. So it's not about answers, it's about better questions. It's about how we can identify our strengths and how we can employ these strengths and abilities for a flourishing life. So, but as I said, positive psychology, there are so many misunderstandings about that. First of all, it's not synonym with positive thinking. That's a totally different story. Positive psychology doesn't tell us to always be happy. It's not the case. Or always look at the positive side. It doesn't deny realities. It doesn't deny unhappiness and pain. And it's not even a topic. It's a movement. It's an approach. And it's not about just hedonic happiness. It's at the individual level. It's much greater than that. It is about social life. It's about well-being. And Martin Seligman believes that there are 3 levels of happiness and well-being. The base is hedonic happiness for a pleasant life. The second one is the state of flow for an engaged life, again by Csikszentmihalyi. And then eudynamic well-being, which is on the top, for a purposeful and meaningful life. So that's the structure, that's the framework that the scholars in positive psychology are working at. And in next slides, I'll explain how it relates to what I'm talking about. So Martin Seligman in 2018 has a paper about a model. It's called, an abbreviation is PERMA, positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning, and accomplishment. So these are the main aspects of positive psychology. And again, when you look at these aspects, there is always information seeking and sharing in all of them, So that's what it's like. It can be like a theoretical framework for us, looking at engagement from an information science perspective, looking at relationship from information science, looking at meaning. So that's what we can do. And there are other disciplines or topics emerging. I'll give you just two examples. So this is not just positive psychology. We have positive sociology, we have positive education. I don't know how familiar are these terms for you. In positive sociology, it's an area to understand the social aspects of leisure life, the community, the relationship, the social connectedness. So, and positive education is about how to teach our children not only traditional skills of science and mathematics and history, but also well-being skills, how they can be more resilient, how they can be more hopeful, how they can be more basically prepared for their real life. So that was a very brief picture of positive psychology and new disciplines relevant to it. I call them sister disciplines. So then here, positive information science, I believe, is a multidisciplinary concept with very strong links with positive psychology and well-being studies, highlighting the role of positive information experiences in our overall wellness. So that's exactly what I'm doing in my research. I am trying to understand how serious leisure participants collect, share, use, and produce information about their leisure activities for a more meaningful and joyful life. And this is something that they told me. I didn't, this is not my assumption. I'll give you an example. One of the questions that I asked from bonsai growers, I asked them why you are involving in this practice, in this hobby for example, 45 years. What is the secret of that? How you remain inspired? And they say, this is the first thing I do every morning when I wake up. So that's the passion of my life. Without bonsai, there is a big gap in my life. And then when you look at the Japanese, for example, philosophy, it's what they call ikigai. Ikigai is something that gives meaning to your life. So the point is here, for a meaningful and purposeful life, which is the beginning of eudynamic well-being, there is always a chain of information, and that's where we can play our role. So basically, I'm trying to put my research into a bigger picture. So I'm trying to put my research perspective and map it into a eudynamic well-being from an information science perspective. So an empirical data from my past and present project illustrate that the concept applicability in LIS research policy and practice. Talking about policy, imagine libraries in the GLAM sector, all GLAM sectors, thinking about how we can provide people with more opportunities to experience more positive information activities. What are the policies we can do that? And practice, in our practice, how we can help them to experience more positive information experiences. So I'll give you another example, a very informative and an excellent paper written by Price and Robinson in 2017. They are talking about fun information, fun and fandom. And that's a PhD for Price. So Ludi Price, yeah. That's the PhD. So in this PhD, they were looking at how people involved in fun activities use and create and share information. And they realized that by doing this, they create different kinds of communities. They create communities of interest, they create communities of practice, they create communities of play, they create communities of relationship. So again, it's not personal aspects, it's social as well. So conclusion, right. So the framework that I'm trying to build in my research hopefully will enable us to conceptualize and contextualize empirical data to better understand human information experiences in various contexts by looking at information experience from positive psychology lens. And also the framework is a productive ground, I believe, to design and develop more interdisciplinary studies in LIS research. Again, many scholars in our field, they have already called for more interdisciplinary research. And this is a good example of that. When we are talking about joy, we are talking about well-being, we are talking about dynamic well-being. Obviously, we are borrowing all these ideas from other disciplines, and there are rooms for more interdisciplinary activities. And these are references. I just put a selection of them. And thank you for your attention. And any question or comments, I will be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Yazdan, for sharing that positive view.
Sorry, I was scrabbling for my mouse. Sorry, Casey.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Yes, thanks very much, Yazdan. I haven't spotted any questions in the chat. Does anyone have a question for Yazdan?
Well, yeah, I was going to ask him one. I was going to ask him a question, Simon, just like, because, yeah, even this morning I was doing a conference proposal, and one of the sections was, statement of the research problem. And you're right, it is really like our research is really framed in that way. And how can we improve something, a problem that's already there, or something, how can we make something bad better? But you're kind of looking at it like, how can we make something better, best, I guess, or better. So yeah, I'm just wondering like how it would actually look like kind of in practice, or is it that we kind of just ignore that question about what is the research problem and just go towards a more positive, take a more positive spin on it?
Yes, thank you, Casey. That's a very good question. Basically, we don't ignore that. We have a research problem, obviously, in our research. Then it must be a research problem to address. My point here is when we are exploring the field that we are studying, whatever is the field, what we can do is just, it's a kind of emancipatory approach. Rather than putting our ideas into boxes that already exist, we can be very creative and open to what's happening. So that's why we need more qualitative approach. We need to listen to our participants. We need to be open to possibilities. So basically, we start with all these framework that is acceptable in terms of research program, research problem, research question, everything is the same. We don't change that. But when we are doing the research, when we are collecting the data, when we are analyzing the data, my whole argument here is be as open and flexible and creative as possible, and look at what works rather than what doesn't work. Look at what is already working well and can be better. So it's a kind of, again, the best word I can use for this is emancipation. Emancipation from what limit us for in our research. We need to break these walls, we need to look at what's happening like a child, like children. This is your area of expertise. So how they look at things. And it's about, again, it's not about answers, about questions. Look at the way children ask questions. They ask wonderful questions because their question is based on their own pure observation without any prior assumption. So that's the point here. Because in the past, in human information behavior, we assume that people are very rational creatures. They have a problem to fix, or they have a task to complete. They go to the library or other information resources, and then there is a number of steps. They follow that, and we developed a number of models. You know, Wilson model, Ellis model, different kinds of models, and we put everything into that small box. But many other things is happening beyond that box. So yeah, that's the point.
So there are a couple of questions in the chat from Rachel. The first one, is there a link between positive information science and mindfulness? Mindfulness being very popular in education now, or potentially how positive information science might work in schools?
Yes, definitely there is a link, because mindfulness is one of the core concepts in positive psychology, and then it's about the slowness. It's about, you know, being present here and now, and this is a big movement around the world. Eckhart Tolle, I don't know you know him or not. Eckhart Tolle is one of the pioneers of that, you know, and he's talking about thoughtless awareness. It's a flow experience, you know, when we have a direct connection with our consciousness. So it's just understanding our world without the thoughts that is always a noise in our mind. So mindfulness helps us to reduce the noise, reduce this internal voice in mind. And then obviously it can be a research topic in information science, to what extent mindfulness can help people to be better information seekers. I haven't seen a paper about that. To what extent mindfulness can help people to have a more efficient, productive, fruitful information experience. So the answer is definitely yes.
And Rachel's other question was about, how do you think we can step out of the fight or flight programming and doing mode that we have as human beings?
Oh yeah, that's a $6 million question. So basically, this is a very interesting global argument at the moment, that we are more human doing than human being. So we are always worried about what to do, and people keep asking what we should do to be calm, what we should do to reduce our stress. The question is, this question should be asked in a different way. What should we not to do? You know, just stop doing. So that's a global problem. That's I would say it's a global crisis. It has all different cultural, social, political aspects. But the good news is you can see many people around the world in different disciplines are working on that. Especially this pandemic, although had so many negative consequences, but one of the positive outcome, if we can call it positive, of course, it helps the humankind in general to stop a little bit, to slow down, and then see. They are talking about a big movement called the Great Resignation. I don't know whether you heard that. Many people are leaving their job because after the pandemic, they realize their job is not as meaningful and as joyful they want. And this stop helped them to understand that. So many things is happening. Yeah, it's very exciting.
So Rachel did ask a quick follow-up about I think the answer to her first question. She asked if you could spell the name of the author you mentioned there.
Eckhart Tolle.
Can we spell that?
Yes, it's his book is here. Is ECKH ART TOLLE.
Wow.
Would you possibly be able to share the details of that book so that we can all go and throw money and buy a copy and blah, 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 rent it from the library, steal it, whatever?
Yeah, I just type his name here.
Yeah, cool. But is it one particular book? I mean, if he's only...
No, he has so many books.
Oh, they're all good, yes?
This is one of his books, Eckhart Tolle. He's German. His life story is very interesting. He has been experiencing depression for a long time, and then eventually when he was 29 years old, he has a moment of awakening, and then he became a teacher, and his books are basically millions of copies is being translated in different languages, and so it's very popular. Eckhart Tolle.
I did have a question regarding the idea of this positive information science as a kind of research that is enjoyable versus like as a kind of almost leisurely, enjoying that process of research and finding ways to make it work. Do you think that there's a perception not only of the processes that we have in place for traditional research, but also the concept of research outputs, metrics, and the way that influences academic employment opportunities, and the kind of idea of just general productivity that's part of the industrial world, that's just a bit antithetical to this idea?
Yes, very much so. Basically, the recent movement of the last 20 years or so about, pushing academics to publish more, publish or perish, and all these journal issues and all this ranking, it's just like a toxic to creativity, toxic to healthy academic life. So basically, I think in not a long future, everything should be different, because it's not sustainable. Universities around the world at the moment, they are dealing with a very big problem. And there must be a time to return. This road goes to nowhere. Asking academics to publish more, you can see all the negative consequences. We are basically, it's just like a toxicity in academic soul and academic spirit. I always said that. Yeah.
Any other questions for Yazdan?
Simon, I have a question. I guess funding bodies and stuff, or just in general, or you're kind of like, what's the so what of your research? And you mentioned the fan studies, and I know you've worked with my student, Eric Forcier, who's in the process of writing up his dissertation right now. He's finishing up, and he has, reading his draft, and he has like the so what after each section. And even in my own head, I'm thinking, yeah, so what? Like, what does it matter what the fans are doing? What is it adding to, what's the important bit? Because he's looking at the information behaviors of fans.
Yes.
And so fans of different story worlds, like he's done a few case studies on fan communities around Game of Thrones, for example.
Yes.
But he is finding the positive community of fans and how they kind of support each other. He's kind of developed this model and different definitions, like a compassionate fan. Like he did some interviews, and one of his fans actually helped pay for the mother of So You Think You Can Dance contestant to go to the dance final. Like they raise money to help the mother do that. And but then he has this whole bit about toxic fans and how negative, how that kind of negative, almost like cyberbullying, really. I guess you kind of have to put it into, when you're talking about the so what, we don't kind of think about the positive as much, and the positive impact that something can be. It is so negative. Like that Publish in Paris example you gave is a great example.
Yes. And so basically, my answer to this question is obviously the question "so what" is very important. Is the first question that every researcher should ask himself or herself: why I am doing that? And to find out the answer, I think mapping our research into bigger pictures with interdisciplinary links can be very helpful. You know, library and information science as a field of study and research, just many other fields, is not, it can be a standalone on its own. There is always a link with other aspects, other disciplines. So that's one possibility to answer this question of so what, mapping it into bigger picture. And also the relevance to everyday life is very important. So the relevance to what's happening in everyday life of people, real people, you know, real people over there that we never saw them. So for example, Jane is here. Her research is about, at the moment, the homeless and public libraries. So this is an excellent example of what is already there. We neglected to see them. We didn't look at what they need, and we focus more on the privileged group of society. What about the homeless or prisoners? So basically, we need more humanity in our research. We need more kind of altruism. We need more relevance again. You know, we can't say that we do the research, the rest of the society doing their life. It doesn't work like that. And then talking about fan, for example, fan groups. I recently read again this paper by Price and Robinson. They are ordinary people like us, millions of them. They spend hours and hours of their life following all these news. So they are a very big group of people. So their problems is important. Their achievement is important. Their contribution in life is important. So I don't know whether I answered your question or not, but I like to highlight the fact that yes, we always should ask so what, but we need to be more creative to answer that, because whatever we research about, there must be a link to something very important. There must be. That's our job to find it.
I think that the fan context is quite interesting, sort of linking to something I was thinking about. So I'm not sure if this is going to end up as a question or just a general sort of thing to get your thoughts about. But it strikes me that, and I'm sure that you and the researchers working in this field have thought about this, that there's obviously a huge amount of complexity associated with the emotions of information seekers and the affective elements associated with information seeking of people involved in serious leisure, right? Overall, they might reflect positively, and you'd imagine they would reflect positively on their serious leisure pursuits. But we all know that when you are, deeply involved in something, I mean, so give an example, I'm trying to grow tomatoes, right? The last couple of years, I'm trying to grow tomatoes. I cannot grow good tomatoes. And I generally enjoy gardening. And if you ask me about it, I would say sort of positive things about gardening. But when I'm spending another night trawling the web to try and work out what I'm doing wrong, it is not a positive experience.
No, it's not.
I would in no way describe that as a positive experience. But yet, if by some miracle I happen to discover a way that I can actually grow tomatoes, if you ask me in 3 months' time, I will reflect on it positively. So there's a weird kind of temporal element going on here. There's a weird set of links between outcomes and processes and commitments and sort of sunk costs and all sorts of weird and complex things going on in how we determine whether something is a positive or negative experience. So actually, I didn't end up as a question, but I'm just interested in your thoughts on that.
That's a very good point, Simon. Basically, by positive information science or positive psychology, we don't deny pain and problems, and we don't deny the importance and urgency of all these negative aspects. The point is, traditionally, many disciplines like psychology, their focal point, their starting point of research was always on the negative sides. What went wrong? You know, someone is depressed, let's you know, help him or her, or someone has a trauma. And the other thing is, we are not saying that we should stop all that aspects or forget them or just stop doing research about, for example, information anxiety. What I'm trying to say here is a call for not forgetting about all the strengths and strong points and values that can help us to have a better life. Again, the ultimate goal is well-being, you know, eudaimonic well-being. It's not about being happy all the time. There are many people with very chronic disease or disabilities, and they are, in terms of well-being, they are wonderful. You know, they have a very purposeful, meaningful life, much better than people who are medically totally fine. So the Australian of the year, one of them is a disabled person, and so it's not denying anything. It's not, for example, in serious leisure, if it becomes an obsession, it will bring all the negative consequences. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, and you read some fan forums, and there's clearly a lot of toxicity and unpleasantness, and people are clearly not having fun engaging with those.
Yeah, and also, if you look at the literature, there are some people rightly talking about the obsession of happiness. You know, we are obsessed by happiness at the moment. We want to be happy all the time. It's not possible. It's not nor possible nor desirable. So it's good to clarify these things. And thank you for asking these questions.
Might be worth noting that Rachel mentioned in the chat that point about her point there was positivity can also be toxic, which I think is exactly what you're.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, positivity. Too much positivity when it actually lead us to the denial mode, when we ignore urgency of things. Yeah, it can be toxic, definitely. Yeah. So. But here in information science, in our field, when you look at the literature, we just recently, after decades of looking at information behavior, just recently, Library Trends is going to publish the first special issue about the joy of information. So it means it has been neglected, obviously. And I'm waiting for that special issue. They were supposed to publish it by a few months ago, but still not yet.
Are you in that, Yazdan?
No, I submitted a paper. They rejected it. They were very kind, of course.
Bummer.
They received 35 papers and they wanted only 8, so it was very competitive.
Oh wow,
So,
that's a good sign.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a very good sign. So they rejected it, but they were very kind and encouraging, and I really appreciate the way they handled it. They were very positive in their referring process.
All right. Well, some good chat going on about language and so on. Maybe have a look at those. But I don't know if anyone has any final questions or we want to wrap up. Casey's pondering whether we need to rename "Shut Up and Write" into something more positive. To be honest, yeah, I'm trying to think what would work best for me. Probably "Shut Up and Write" is quite effective.
Yeah, because it isn't the point that we don't have time to
beat around the bush.
Yeah. But that write and flow and write. That's a good one, Rachel. We're using writer's block currently, which is not, super negative, but like, yeah, you feel like you're getting, I have to be positive, I can't say anything, but if something's bothering you or something, then what I like about Australian culture is that you guys swear a lot more than the Americans do in a professional context, which might not be enjoyed by everyone, but I feel like it lets a little bit of that get out. So
oh yeah, but since we started recording everything on Zoom, I've been censoring myself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I learned that soon after having some meetings with Jane.
I know, I'm terrible. I do try.
All right. Sorry, that was all being caught on the recording. But great. So thanks, everyone. And thanks particularly to Yazdan for yet another really stimulating and interesting session. It's great that we've got people in the school working on this kind of problem and thinking about things in this kind of conceptual, philosophical way. I think it adds a lot. So thank you, Yazdan. And thanks, everyone. I think Hamid's down on the list to do the next seminar, which I'm just frantically reminding myself what it's called. Gender Disparity in Australian Science, a study of article authorship. So that should be really interesting. So I'll see you all there for that.
Great. Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Simon. Thanks, Yazdan.
Bye.